Let's look at some value types that are available in Vyper. I'm going to first create a file, and I'll name this val.by. Next, I'll set the compiler version. Let's say pragma version, target anything that starts with 0.4. Here are some of the common data types available in Vyper. Boolean, int 128, uint 256, decimals, address, bytes 32, bytes, and string. Let's create state variables for each of them. Let's start with the Boolean. I'll call this b, and let's make this a public state variable, public bool. And to initialize this, let's declare a constructor at deploy def underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and then let's say self.b to reference this state variable called b, and let's set this to true. Okay, moving on, let's look at an example for int 128. Int 128 can represent both negative number and positive number in the range of -2 raised to the power of 127 to 2 raised to 127 minus 1. I'll call this I, and let's make this again a public state variable, public int 128. And to initialize this inside the constructor, let's type self.I is equal to. I'm going to show you that this can be a negative number, so I'll type -1, 2, 3. Next, we have a uint 256. Uint 256 can only represent 0 or positive numbers. This will range from 0 to 2 raised to the power of 256 minus 1. I'll create a state variable called u. Call this public, and the data type is uint 256. Let's also initialize this inside the constructor. Let's say self.u is equal to, I'll say 1, 2, 3. Next, moving on to decimals. So unlike solidity, in Vyper, we can also have a data type called decimals. The range for decimals is -2 raised to the power of 127 to 2 raised to the 127 minus 1, and it will have 10 decimal places. Now if you're using Vyper to compile a contract with decimals, then you'll need to pass in an extra parameter called enable decimals. So for this demo, we might not be able to compile the decimals. We'll see later. Let's call this deck and public decimals. And to initialize this, let's say self.deck is equal to 3.14. There's also address type. Let's call this addr public address. And to initialize this, let's say self.addr is equal to. Let's set this to message.sender. Message.sender. Message.sender here will be the account that deployed this contract. Okay, and then we also have bytes 32. Let's name this b32 public bytes 32. The most common use case of bytes 32 is the output of a cryptographic hash such as Keccak256. Okay, let's also initialize this. Let's say self.b32 is equal to. Okay, I just copied the random bytes 32 and then I'll paste it here. Okay, there's two more data types that I want to cover here, bytes and string. So say bs public bytes. Now this is an interesting one, since we need to tell Vyper what is the maximum length that this bytes will hold. Here we'll initialize bytes, saying maximum 100 bytes. Okay, and then say self.bs is equal to. We don't have to use all 100 bytes, so let's just store a small data. To store bytes as the row, we will type b and then followed by double quotes. Inside the double quote, backslash, and then start with x, and let's store 0, 1, 0, 1. Okay, and then we also have string. Let's call this s public string. So similar to the example with bytes, we need to specify the maximum length that this string will be. Again, let's put a 100 and then say self.s is equal to hello Vyper. Okay, so that completes the examples of some value types available in Vyper. Let's try compiling the contract. Click on the Vyper icon. And if you don't see a Vyper icon over here, you'll need to activate it by going to plugin and then searching for a Vyper compiler. Okay, let's compile this contract. Okay, so I get an error saying that I need to enable decimals. So we declare a decimal data type over here, but inside Remix, we're not able to pass this extra parameter enable decimals to compile this contract. So for this example, let's remove this data type. Then also do the same over here. Let's try compiling the contract again. Okay, and our contract compiled. Let's deploy this contract. Click on the deployment tab, then make sure that you selected the val.by file. Click deploy. And once the contract is deployed, let's open this and then call some of these functions. Address, B for Boolean, B32 for bytes 32, BS for bytes, I for int 128, S for string, and U for uint 256.